then when we're done the conversation, you could say if you want to make it public or
Okay.
not. So anyway, so you spent 2 years in your van?
Yes, I did. Yes, it was after COVID. It was in 2021, I think. Um, I had been living on a vineyard in Sonoma, which is kind of like living in heaven, the most
Yeah.
beautiful, one of the most beautiful parts of the country. But I had to move, and I had a van that I used to use for work, had very low miles, and I could almost stand up in the back of it. And
Wow.
and I'd been wanting to do it for a long time. So I fixed it up and traveled, just about everywhere I wanted to travel. So spent the summers in the mountains and the winters in the desert. So it
Oh,
was a lot of
nice.
fun.
Did you have any stuff in the van? Did you have anything for water, sewer,
Oh
refrigerator?
yeah. Yeah, it's I probably put about 12 or $13,000 into it. So I had bed, storage, toilet, water, um, just about everything you need, to do that lifestyle. And my friends told me I figured that if I was going to spend that much time in a such a small space, that I was going to make it look really nice. So I put like a copper colored metal ceiling in it and all kinds of detail work and interesting little things I pick up at antique stores. And one of my friends told me it looked like a cross between Lawrence of Arabia and Ralph Lauren.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Did you have screens and stuff so you could have the windows and doors open? Or
Yes. Well, I had a really good I have it. I still have it.
that's great.
Um, I have a Max Air fan in the back and a smaller one in the front, so I could get a continuous airflow through without having to open any windows. So the
Nice.
solar power, the whole thing. So
That's fantastic.
yeah,
That's great for bugs and it's actually better for rodents than the average RV.
yes,
Vans are safer from rodents and stuff. Yeah,
right.
it's awesome. What had you stop? Why are you now where
Oh,
you are?
it's so interesting. I traveled up to the Northwest to Brooklyn to see my family. I have a daughter and her husband and my grandson. And as I was driving away, I had kind of come to the end of my list of where I wanted to travel. And I was driving south through New Jersey and then through Pennsylvania. And I came into Maryland and came around a turn. And here was this beautiful little antique town, Cumberland, Maryland. And so I swerved and got off the road and wanted to explore it. 3 days later, I had signed a lease on an apartment.
That's
So it was
interesting.
it was so out of the blue. I mean, I had no plans to do that. I was on my way to the mountains for the summer,
Hmm.
and this is about a year ago now. And and so now I'm in a place, and so I'm really glad that I did because it's given me a chance to. I've set up an office, and so I can shoot videos and work on my
Hmm.
writing and classes that I teach, all of those things. It gives me a real stable base to work
Yes.
from, and it's
Yeah.
made all the difference.
Yes. Yeah. It is a little topsy-turvy. Um, Yeah, if you saw, I mean, I'm balanced on my knees on a basket. Here's the RV, here's the TV,
Yes,
and
yes.
then,
Uh-huh.
right there is the Wi-Fi where we are now. There's a satellite, so it's very, it's more efficient to be in a home.
Yeah,
That's why most people
yeah,
do it, right?
yeah. Well, this lifestyle that you're living and I was living, it's like living on a small boat. It's a full-time
Yes,
job, as you know. You have to take care of everything right as it comes up. You can't wait,
yes,
can't put things off.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I was just changing the propane right before this, and I was like, gotta wash my hands again, twice after propane. Gotta wash the hands, and
Where are
okay.
you? Where are you now? Where are you now?
I'm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. There's this little town that's right, like surrounded by Lake Superior, basically, and it's just amazing. And in the
Oh, that's
summer,
great.
it's very, our goal is kind of like to live in spring and fall. Like, so, the temperatures here are very moderate, and the energy of Lake Superior is just supreme.
Oh, that's
So
great.
it's wonderful. Yeah. So I kind of follow the weather so we can work outside, and
Yeah.
also where the energy is really good. Asheville Mountains, here, down in Florida by the springs, like just really earth energy.
Yes. Yes, that's great.
Yeah. So, oh, I'm so grateful that you wanted to meet with me. I'm really interested in myself knowing and also sharing with other mystics what you're up to, and where you are and how you got there. So, um, unless there's something you wanted to really start with, I just want to hear what your everyday life is now. What is life for you like, Michael?
Okay. Well, I meditate every day, and I have a daily email that I send out that I call spirit briefings.
Mm,
I have about just under 1,000 subscribers in my mailing list, and it's like a daily meditation that I do, and uh, for other people, and everybody loves it. They just absolutely, they're always sending me messages saying this is really great, keep them coming. So I've been doing that for over a year. Uh, every single day. So that's like a practice in and of itself. But my meditations are very important to me. I've been developing a proprietary method of meditating uh, that goes where I think that the word meditate means moving toward the center. And so I go within, uh, withdraw from the external sensory world and into an awareness of the space immediately behind me. And I see that as a region of very high energy and spirit awareness. And so as I back up into that, then I lose all my sense of space and time and sense of bodily awareness, all of everything, and I enter into this beautiful space of infinite energy, infinite awareness, uh, and it's almost like plugging in my phone to recharge it. I get I get energized by doing it, and so I've been working on a course to show other people how to do this, and with the idea that if you meditate, it should mean something. It should actually produce an experience every time.
yeah,
And
good for you.
that, yeah, yeah. So that's what I do. And I live alone. I live in Cumberland, Maryland, and it's a very small Appalachian town. So I spend most of my days indoors and working on my writing. And uh, I talk a lot with people, teach classes online, and I have people who uh, for whom I'm a spiritual coach. I have 4 people right now that working with. So pretty busy, but it's all directed inward.
Right. And what I love about doing spiritual work with others is that it requires me to be doing it myself with them. Do you
Yes,
have that picture?
yes, yeah. To because you have to, you can't, you can't lead from behind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Awesome. So, could I ask more about the meditation?
yes, please.
So you said the space behind you. How do you define you? You said me, behind me. What does that look like? Can you tell me more about what me is?
Yes, yes, sure. So we have to start where we are, right? And we know we're conscious. And so most of the time, we locate ourselves in the forehead or in the eyes. If you ask someone, where are you in your body? And that's generally what people will say. So I start with having a person move their consciousness from their forehead to the back of the head.
Oh, the back of the head.
Yes. Now that has the immediate effect of silencing the thoughts
Right.
because the mind, the brain is saying, what? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? And so it shuts off and it's in full, question mode. So that has the immediate benefit of quieting the thoughts. But then I move about 3 or 4 inches behind. And what I'm doing essentially is I'm moving into that shaft of light, that column of light that is really internal. But because we're so focused in the external world, we're actually kind of leaning forward into the world. So by leaning back into this column of light, we're moving into an interior space. It just feels external. And so as we do, we're backing up into our core energy. And that's then where consciousness merges with what people call non-dual consciousness. So that's where all sense of space and time just vanishes. And there's this infinite field of intense awareness and potentiality. Nothing manifests. There's no thing in there, but it's very much alive. But it's inside. But so I lean back just to get more in alignment with true vertical.
Yes.
And and as I do that, then it lights up and it's behind me and above me, kind of like that picture of Buddha where he's sitting in meditation and there's a cobra, a giant cobra behind him, and the hood of the cobra comes up and over him as protecting him.
Mm.
It's that same kind of feeling. So
I'm just looking at,
as you do it,
um,
yeah, you can actually
yeah,
do
I'm
it
looking
right
at
as
you.
I describe it. Yeah.
Um, so, that you've developed this meditation method? Have you iterated from anything or just from nothing,
Have I
from
what?
your own? Have you iterated your practice from something that you learned outside yourself, or did you discover all
Oh,
this in within?
well, I have about 20 years of formal training in Christian mystical schools.
Hmm.
My original training was with the Holy Order of Mans in the early 70s, and uh, and then with other groups that were affiliated with it. So, and when I say formal training, I mean with genuine Christian masters and other teachers too of different traditions,
Hmm.
Hinduism and Sufism, um, and Judaism. So these things I've been studying these things my whole life, but I have yet to come across anybody else who approaches it quite the way that I do. So yes, I did develop this. Um, it actually started back in the late 90s. I was teaching a class to a group of people, a meditation class, and my students said that when she went into meditation and closed her eyes, her body would start to sway and start to spin, oscillate, more accurate way to put it. And it was so disorienting that she would have to open her eyes, and then she felt like it was interfering with her ability to meditate. And so I got the immediate inner guidance to have her visualize the XYZ axes, the vertical axis, the horizontal axis side to side, and the front and back axis. So it's the cross, the XYZ axes. And when and the center of it would locate like right in the center of her abdomen. And when she did it, that problem of her body oscillating went away instantly and permanently. And so I realized I'm really onto something. And so for the next year, I practiced that myself, and I would go out walking on a high school track because it's very safe, and I can meditate while I walk. And so I would practice that for about an hour at a time, visualizing this XYZ axes, this framework or like a scaffold for consciousness. And I found it to be very stabilizing and very orienting and very aligning me with true vertical, uh, which made me stand up straight. And whenever we stand up straight, we learn in yoga that frees up the energy in our spine and it
Mhm.
moves more freely. And so all of this was combined in this exercise. And from that exercise, then I built this meditation technique, which I call quiet mind meditation. So it's been evolving over a long period of time, but I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years. And it's one of the things that I've rarely come across that doesn't doesn't weaken or disappear over time. Because normally, if we have a spiritual experience, it comes on very strong, lasts for about 3 days, and then it tails off because we acclimatize to it. We
We
internalize it,
acclimatize.
and then it becomes part of us.
Yes.
Yeah, but this has never gone away. Every time I do it, it's like fresh. It's like the first time. So I go into meditation. I back up. Uh, Here's another thing too. I found this really, really interesting. I heard a story once of a person who was a prisoner of war. Yeah, I think it was in Southeast Asia, and he was being held and being tortured. And he's laying in his bed on his cot one night in his cell, and he could hear somebody screaming in the room next to him. And
Mhm.
then he realized that's me.
Mhm.
Because of the trauma, he had dissociated
Yeah.
from his body, got out of his body. And we have a lot of reports of people doing that.
Sure.
Trauma causes them to get out of their body and observe from a distance as a way to protect themselves. And I figured, why, we have a negative connotation for that with that, uh, because it normally happens in a trauma situation. But I thought, why not do that voluntarily? Why not do that deliberately? And so part of my method is to utilize, I call it voluntary dissociation. So you're sitting where you're sitting, you can actually get out of your body and look at your body from the side, or you can look at your body from behind.
Mhm.
And that immediately puts you into your observer self. And that puts you in a dimension that you're already in anyway.
Yeah.
You're just preoccupied with being in your physical body and using your physical senses.
Mhm.
So, and it's the thing that is so amazing is that it's so easy. It's so easy to do.
Mhm.
So I show people how to do that. And then once you do that, you can observe yourself from outside of yourself, which does it completely puts you in an objective frame of mind, very observant, without being attached to what you're saying or what you're doing. It's like being with another person and observing them. And so this is a real boost in personal agency, because then you kind of coach yourself as you're observing yourself. And it's very powerful. It's a very powerful technique. So I have exercises to show people how to do that and put them in real life situations where they can practice that, in public, going to the supermarket, for instance, to be able to step out of themselves, observe themselves, and then watch at how that affects the people around them. So we're working with real energy, real consciousness in real time. And it it wakes people up. It enables them to move into that higher state of consciousness. Call it higher self, observer self. Doesn't really matter what you call it. It's a real phenomenon, and it gives us enormous power, the power to live. So,
Mhm. Cool. Yeah. Um, yeah, it works for whom it works for, right? It works for the people who are ready to operate on that level.
well,
And
it's
that's who shows
interesting.
up.
My cousin's husband, he's a real gearhead, but he's a very intelligent guy and he's a good man. Um, but he's not into spirituality.
Hmm.
But and he's older and he has chronic back pain and he was really having trouble with his back one day. And I was on the phone with him and I had him do that technique of moving from the forehead to the back of his head and then slightly behind. He got it instantly, almost
Nice.
faster than I could tell him.
Yes.
And he was doing it for like a minute, not more than a minute. And then he said, "Oh my God, the pain in my back is down to about 50%."
Yeah.
So here's that voluntary or deliberate dissociation at
Yeah.
work. And so I thought, well, I've got to try this myself. So the next time I went to the dentist, I'm sitting in the chair and nothing major, but it was irritating, the noise and everything. So I backed up and was observing myself from behind myself. And sure enough, the pain and the irritation just dropped dramatically.
Mhm.
So it's just a skill, right? Doesn't mean I'm a good person or a spiritual person. It's just a little bit of control of consciousness, control
Yeah.
of mind, and just simply doing it. And so it's immediately available to anybody.
Very cool. So two things you said reminded me of Kundalini. One is the cobra and the other is oscillating. So I'm wondering if you're familiar with that and how you see that
Oh yeah.
relates to what you're seeing.
Yes. Yes. Well, I I don't use that terminology too much, although of course I'm very familiar with it. I know that we have the Shushmana current and the Ida and the Pingala currents on either side. It's like the three pillars of the Kabbalistic tree of life, central pillar that and the two energies on either side. It corresponds anatomically to the spinal cord and the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems.
Hmm.
Symbolically, it refers to Christ on the cross with the two thieves, one on either side.
Hmm.
It shows up in that ancient symbol of the caduceus, where you have the staff
Hmm.
with the wings and then the two serpents coiled around it.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all talking about this energy within us.
Yeah.
So, but I don't speak normally in terms of Kundalini because there are too many associations with that people can get off into, and then it becomes too ideational and less experiential. So, so I just talk about like a column of light, by introducing new terms for it, it disrupts that association with prior knowledge, which can really get in the way. So, so we want to get our mind's attention, and the best way to get our mind's attention is with novelty. When we present the
Mhm.
mind with something new, it immediately wakes up and says, "What? What's this? I got to check this out." And so it gets quiet, turns off the thoughts, it gets intensely observant, and that's exactly where we want to be when we meditate. We want to get into that observant frame of mind. So
Mhm.
all of these things are just like they're like brain hacks essentially. It's just
Yeah.
ways to hack consciousness to get where we want to be.
Right.
So
Consciousness hacks.
yes, I
Awesome.
don't like that
Um,
word hack. It's a little violent, but you know what I mean.
well, yeah, it's like that's how it's used, from in the last
Yeah,
few decades.
yeah.
So, the first time I heard about Christian esoteric or Christian mysticism, certainly Christian esoteric, was putting on the mind of Christ, Jim Marion.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I've
Secrets
got
in the
that. I've got that book.
Yeah, love that book.
I really like
Um,
it. Yeah.
I just love it. And um, the science of soul has the evolution of soul maturity has gone on and on and on. But I just love how simple that book is. And so anyway, I'm really interested in what it was like for you to do those studies. Like, what did you learn? How much of it was practice and how much of it was intellectual? That kind of thing. I'd love to hear
Oh, sure, sure.
in the training you did.
Yeah, so my training was, I'm not going to say it was anti-intellectual, but our teacher was he wasn't big on uh intellectual discourse. He did not like that at all. He wanted
Hmm.
the way he taught was through direct experience. And
Hmm.
so the order was modeled kind of after Ignatius Loyola's Jesuit order when he was in the very beginning of his career. So we had the sacraments, the seven sacraments. It, if anybody just walked in the door, they would think we were Roman Catholic because we wore the garb, we wore crosses, the white collar, um, and we had communion services, prayers, um, when in actuality we were much closer to Rosicrucianism than Catholicism. But we
Hmm.
used the sacraments because those are universal and timeless. And so every one of our houses, we had centers in every state in the Union and also a couple of countries in Europe at the height, which was in the early to mid 70s. And so working at the altar using these alchemical rituals to invoke and embody higher beings, specifically Jesus Christ, whom we regarded as the Lord of Earth, like an ascended master.
Uh-huh.
So, so we're all of our practice was all of our spiritual attainment came through direct contact with these higher beings,
Hmm.
not by reading about them, not by studying about them or basing what
Hmm.
we thought on what other people had experienced.
Hmm.
So we did the work more from the inside out
Hmm.
than from the outside in. Although, there were books that we read and you know, material very eclectic, very wide ranging. One of the people who were involved in the formation of our order was Murshid Samuel Lewis of the Sufi movement. He and our teacher, Father Paul, Dr. Blyton, were very close friends. And amongst Sufis, Murshid Sam is, you know, everyone knows him and regards him as one of the leaders in the movement from that time period. And another person that was involved was Master Subramanya of the Hawaiian Hindu monastery on the island of Kauai, and uh, and he's a genuine Hindu guru. So all of these, the order itself was buttressed by these traditional mystical teachings and teachers, so that in all of those groups are they begin their training and their consciousness development from the inside out, so that everything the student learns is through direct experience,
Hmm.
not so much from ideas.
Right.
And that's been really amazing for me because well, right now I'm studying with a couple of friends Hermetic Science. And and it's really neat because we come upon all of these concepts and these exercises and how to use the four elements and consciousness and
Hmm.
energies and visualization. And I already know it. I just don't know it in those words.
Yes.
But
It's
I've
all the same.
experienced just, yeah, everything that I see in it, I've already experienced. So, but studying it is really valuable because that's from the outside in, right? So that gives me more structure and more better, more varied ways to relate to
Yes,
this sacred knowledge.
yes,
Yeah.
very cool. So the picture I'm getting is that the structure, the container was in the Christian paradigms, and then y'all like let go and allowed just learning from the inside out and had teachers and vibration people bringing in vibrations that would assist that, but was more comfortable
Yes.
for people from Christian backgrounds.
Well, our brothers and sisters came from I think I forget the percentage, but it was 10 or 15% of our students were Jewish,
Mhm.
had had grown up, had been raised in religious Jewish homes. And so in that day and age, consciousness was on everybody's front burner because of
Yeah.
the psychedelic movement and
Hmm.
everything. It was like a miniature axial age where consciousness was just exploding. And so the outward form didn't really matter that much because we could immediately see that these people, these teachers, had what we were looking for.
Yes.
And what we were
Yes.
looking for was an expanded consciousness.
Yeah.
So
Of-
that drew us in. They could have been wearing clown suits. It would not have mattered
right.
at all.
Because they were being it.
Yeah. But Wendy, one of the things that gave us the biggest leg up was that we weren't just a teaching order or a mystery school. We were also a service order. And that was the primary reason why we wore the Christian garb, because then we could go out on the streets and be recognized as clergy. And if
Uh,
and in those days, it's very similar to today. There were a lot of crazy people that were grasping for anything. And so we made ourselves available to them, and this was usually in the evenings and late at night in the very worst parts of the city where there was lots of drug use and lots of crime. So we were putting ourselves there not to proselytize. We were actually forbidden to do that. We just had to be available to people if they needed us as
yeah.
somebody to talk to and help them sort out what's going on inside. But we were also there to use the occult principles of working with light and with symbolism to actually create changes in the spiritual environment of those dark parts of the city to help clean them up and raise them up. So if we were active in an area for a while, there would be noticeable changes.
Yeah.
And so much so that the local police forces and government, they recognized us. And we even got an award from Dianne Feinstein once for our civic uh, uh, activities. One of which, like in San Francisco, we founded Raphael House, which is still in operation, even though our original order has since disbanded. We've reconstituted it in a different format. But but we had homeless shelters for women and children and for men. We had two centers in San Francisco, one of which is still going. Um, so we were recognized for our service work. Of course, the real service work we're doing is raising the consciousness of a city through this esoteric knowledge, how the laws of creation work, how light and energy and the spirit of life, how that actually moves through us, and how we can use it to affect changes in the world. So we were operating on both levels, from above and also on the street.
Right. It's gorgeous. I love what I'm seeing. It's really lovely. So the garb, the seeming structures were more for the other people, more for the world, going into the world and having some kind of purchase and protection from that. Like they understood, okay, they're doing something spiritual.
Yes,
Um,
yes, right,
not
right.
just
and black, of course, is the most yin color. And in Catholic lore, Mary, which is the divine feminine, in the Christian uh, tradition, is the protector of priests. And so that's the reason why priests would traditionally wear black, because uh, it's protective. And the
Mm.
white at the throat is the white is the most yang color. And so there was the word. They're speaking the word,
Oh, fascinating.
putting it forth into the world. Yeah.
Was that overt? That was somebody like really knew that, and then it just got taken up, and nobody
Oh
really
yeah.
knows it
Oh
anymore.
yeah.
Fascinating.
Our teacher, Dr. Earl Blyton, was a true adept, not just a guru, but an adept. And that's a person who knows how the laws of creation work and how to use them. And he taught us how to do that. So yeah, we worked with all of those things consciously. Yeah, again, it was like learning the effect of that was a firsthand experience, because we could see the reaction of people,
Mm.
but because we were also working on our consciousness, we realized that it wasn't just a psychological phenomenon, it was a spiritual phenomenon,
Mhm.
because we carried the light. We carried an
Right.
enormous amount of light, and
Yes.
people would see it and they would respond to it. But there's another reason why we wore that garb. In those days, everybody had long hair and everything. And um, so it was similar to the military. If you want to train a person, really take them out of themselves, right?
Yes.
Because that's part of the purpose of spiritual work, is to get beyond the ego. You take everything away. You take you take uh, their time, their clothing, their haircut, everything about them has changed. Just like in the military, they take everything you've got, they give you everything that you need, and only that. So, so we were under vows, and one of the vows was poverty. So we were self-supporting. So we went out and had jobs, regular jobs, but then we'd come back and just hand over our paycheck and then get a daily or a weekly allowance. And I think in those days it was like $5, you know. So any personal things that we needed, we had to pay for out of our allowance. Everything else was covered. But that has the effect when of if you're not in control of your own life, you're dedicated to living uh, a living symbol of putting God first in everything you do, that does amazing things. It just takes the ego and sets it aside, and then you're immediately living for something greater than yourself 24/7. And all of um, the problems, that we develop through egotism, they just start to drop away. And the more they drop away, the more open we get to these divine energies and consciousness. And there you go, you're off to the races.
Hmm.
So,
And those vows and the was it meant to be lifelong? Was it meant to be over the
yes.
time of training? Lifelong.
Well, a student would begin with a 3-month period of novitiate training, and they would take a temporary vow of obedience. So,
Hmm.
uh, they vowed to follow the instructions as they were given, for their spiritual work. And then they would go into a first year training program where they would take the 5 vows for a year period: and humility, obedience, service, poverty, and purity. I can never remember them when I tried to list them up. Uh, so that would be for a year period, and then at that time, then they would have to pass certain tests, spiritual awareness tests. Then they would take life vows, and that would be then becoming a lifetime vowed member of the Holy Order of Men's. So, and then from there, there was other training like for the priesthood, go on from there.
So
And
fascinating. Go ahead.
And the vows too. Let me just say that the vows are uh, they're very misunderstood. It's like if I administer vows to a person, I'm not getting them to promise that they will live a certain way. It's like take humility, for instance. Humility is actually an aspect of the personality of God. It has its own vibratory presence, its own reality. It's like it's a way of being. It's not even a frame of mind, it's a way of being. And so, in order for me to pass that on to somebody, I have to really get in touch with that, really feel that, and then transfer the reality of that quality of being to the person. And the person has to voluntarily and consciously accept it. And then it's like a divine imprint. So a vow is like a blessing. It's actually entering into a state of consciousness, not just signing a contract. It's not a promise. It's not an obligation. It's really allowing yourself to be imprinted by an elevated state of consciousness that's so elevated it's actually part of the personality of God. So that's what that's how we approach vows, and all of the major mystical traditions have some form of that. You know, some might call it darshan, you know, the transfer of a state of consciousness from teacher to student. It has that aspect to it.
And like in my world, I would want, I love these things, these blessings, these ways of being, these vibrations, related to source, related to God. Um,
Yes,
is that where they're related to, or are they hierarchical?
they're related to God, and then you know, and we all of nature has a hierarchical structure. Um, Even in physics, you know, areas of high vibration tend to move towards areas of low vibration. So that's a hierarchical structure in itself. Um, it's so so it's going to the Godhead, which is located within each and every person, which is what makes individuals sacred. And by going to that source energy within ourselves, not deferring to a higher authority except that which is within ourselves. And like if you can even there's an analogy to conscience. If you have a well-developed conscience, you want to subordinate yourself to that. So that's a hierarchical structure in itself. It's placing something simultaneously recognizing that you have the fullness of divinity within you, but it's in potential. And so, in order to access that potential or to realize that potential, you have to subordinate yourself to it. You can't use it to bolster up your ego. You
Right.
can't you can't you can't take God and appropriate the divine to advance yourself as a separate entity. Because
Right.
number one, nobody's separate. There's no such thing as a separate entity. But but we do have a sense of self, and we're responsible for it
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because if we're not, then it takes over. And so, ironically or paradoxically, it's by taking responsibility for one's persona that one is then able to transcend one's persona.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go around it. There's no
Mm-hmm.
bypassing is not allowed. So,
Right.
you know,
And that's where these vows come in. Like they are like red flags almost of
oh
like
yeah,
may want to recenter um on on uh utilizing the flow for life, not ego.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the vow of poverty, for instance, is really the vow of detachment. It's
Yeah.
non-attachment. It's just the
Right.
Western way of speaking about that. And purity doesn't
Right.
mean, being, what's the word? Prudish. Purity means unconflicted.
Nice.
Purity, like the word adulterate means to take take a substance and add an inferior substance to it.
Right.
So purity is the opposite of adulteration, which and how often do we do that with our own thinking? We allow conflicting beliefs to coexist, and then we become fragmented,
Yes.
psychologically uh, fractured, which
Yeah.
is kind of like headline news today, right? Everybody is completely disintegrated in their thinking.
A lot of cognitive dissonance.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yes. Awesome. This is really fascinating. And so what was your time there like? How long? What did you do? Why did you shift?
Yeah, well, I was in the order proper for 7 years, and it was very regimented. It was co-ed, but nobody could have sex unless they were married. And so we could get married, but that was like on the back burner and everybody knew it. Like if you were able to court someone and then actually marry them, that was like a huge motivation, you know, to really get your act together. Because nobody was given permission to marry. And it literally, we had to get permission to get married or to even date someone. So that was the degree of the regimentation. It was very much a monastic existence, but it was an
Mhm.
updated monasticism because we were always right in the city, living and working at outside jobs, except for people who had to run the house. So it was very regimented. We all dressed the same and we ate together all the time. We prayed together. We meditated together. And we went out into the city to do our service work together. So it's a very tight ship. And I always compared it to like a banana. Like if you start to peel a banana and then you take it and you squeeze the banana real hard, that banana will pop right out the top. So the greater the restriction an egocentric lifestyle and
Yes.
mind frame, that just blows that right out of the water, and you have to change. So some people call that a cult, and it's kind of like that, but we all, if you wanted to, if you were done and you wanted no longer wanted to do that, you just walk, you know,
Right. You're
just
not an evil
nobody,
person.
no.
Yeah. So back to that, the vows being centered on your own uh divine track,
Yes,
not not have to. So the getting permission and stuff, that's like a free will, constantly free will over to the whoever's in charge over you.
right,
But
right.
there's no, they can't whip you or anything. They just okay, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's none of that. But there were some things that anytime you put an organization together, regardless of the spiritual consciousness of the people involved, they're still human beings,
Yes.
right? There's always going to be weird stuff and crazy stuff happening. It's just you can count on it. So
Yes, absolutely.
so the Holy Order of Man's has some things in its history that nobody likes to talk about, but it was nothing that, um, nothing like what you hear about in really
Yeah,
crazy cults. It was
right.
regimented, and it was a monastic regimentation. It all had its orientation, and we had the initiations. We were actually a school of initiation, so we brought people through these very powerful instruments, through the sacraments and through the initiations of illumination and self-realization, just like in the self-realization fellowship. and the Rosicrucian hierarchical step-by-step process towards spiritual consciousness. So we
Mm-hmm.
had all of those tools and drawn from a very wide range of disciplines. So it was the real deal. I mean, our people would just light up like candles. And
Yeah.
so it's a trade-off, but it's you're always dealing with human beings, and human beings will do crazy things. So we
Yes.
had we had our share of that too.
Right. In general, crazy things, but also wiggling around on the hook, not wanting to go to the next level or die and rise or whatever, right?
Oh
Like
yeah. Oh yeah.
anything but that. So that also creates some weirdness.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like it's like training for the Olympics as an athlete. You have a coach, and the coach doesn't care how you feel. You know, it's like,
Mm,
oh, coach, I don't feel like working out today.
it's nice.
Get your ass out of bed and be there in 5 minutes or hit the road.
Right.
That kind of discipline. So there was
Yes.
lots of that. It's like their pressure was always on, do your work, do your inner work and show up or just leave, you know? So
Right.
that's a very powerful motivation, especially for
It
young
is.
people.
It is.
Older people,
And
not so much. When we're older, we say bye.
right, that's enough of this. Yeah. Yeah. And how about like emotionality? Like in a couple times in Zen monastery, I noticed like a lot of, not in sitting, but other times women like just crying and crying. Like there's just a lot of emoting going on. Did the practices help
Yeah.
mitigate that, or was there a lot of just emotionality that had to discharge?
Well, as the light rises up in us, in Kundalini terms, it starts to waken up the centers, and then anything that we're attached to is going to be shaken loose. That's going to
Yeah.
come out, and it comes out in a variety of ways. And emoting is certainly one of those. But we approached it according to alchemical principles, which you take those energies and you contain them. And by containing them, you intensify them. And when you have intensified them and then redirect them, it can be very powerful. Now that happens, you can attempt to do that, but again, being human, that's not always going to work, and you have to just let it out. And and so there's plenty of that. But
Right.
the more they're kept compressed, but for the purposes of transmutation, let's say taking those energies and actually transmuting them into like an upward force that then assists in waking up these higher centers along the spine. So
Hmm.
and so emoting wasn't, and I think that we've since uh, in the spiritual movement in general, we've incorporated more of psychological techniques to help clear the way. Like Ken Wilber talked about waking up versus growing up, and the emotional part
Yeah.
is definitely growing up. And so there are a lot of people incorporating psychological techniques into the spiritual path now, and so we're really breaking new ground in many ways. So it's continually evolving. The spiritual path is continually evolving.
Right. Very cool. Um, so you talked about higher beings like Jesus. Did you personally work with any other higher beings that were very helpful to what I might say match to learn from energetically?
Yeah, certainly. Uh, we worked with angelic beings like the archangels, but archangels are pretty impersonal. They
Yes.
work with large groups of people, nations, that kind of thing. And so they have a particular kind of consciousness that we can communicate with them, but we have to kind of get on their wavelength. So,
Yeah.
so that means being very selfless, not having any personal agenda. Um, and then we worked a lot with Mary, the mother of Jesus, whom we regard also as an ascended being. And that's why, in the Catholic Church, they say that Jesus ascended, was assumed into heaven. It's terminology.
Right. Same
But
thing.
but she's a highly developed being that
Yeah.
she's the feminine. She manifests the feminine aspect. So if we are doing a healing, for instance, then we call on Mary.
Yeah.
And if we want to bring light into the world, truth, uh then we call on Jesus.
Right.
But there are other beings too that, because everybody, uh we all progress through our lifetimes into higher and higher states of consciousness, and eventually then we no longer have to incarnate on the earth. And I know in Buddhism they talk about bodhisattvas, those who are capable of no longer having to reincarnate, but choose to do so so that they can serve
Hmm.
humanity. But then there's the arhat who says, I'm done with all of this, I'm just getting out of here. And
Hmm.
so, but we don't take that path. We take the path of service. But we work with those people, you see, because I mean, there are some who just go and who knows where they go. But then there are those who work at the just above the earth plane, helping people whose consciousness is able, people who are able to transcend their physical consciousness and enter
Right.
into the higher worlds.
Yeah.
So, and when you do that, you find that they're very populated
Yes.
and there's lots of help available if you ask for it.
Yes. Yeah. So besides the obvious Jesus and Mary, is there anyone particularly that you really resonated with that you got a lot of that you really enjoyed or got a lot of traction out of saying hello to?
I think Mary has always been a strong presence in my life. Um,
Hmm.
so I would have to say her. I'm not one um, to get revelations as such. Uh, some people have that spiritual gift where they can really commune one-on-one with somebody and get direct messages. Um, for me, it comes more naturally. And so if I put my attention in a particular direction, my spiritual gift, I think it would be called claircognizance. So if I want to know about something, all I have to do is put my attention on it and stay with it. And it starts to open like a book to me. So so I and then I can corroborate what I discover through that uh,
Hmm.
by what other people have experienced. But
Hmm.
that comes after, you see. So
Right.
everybody has
Right.
their so
So you
as
just
far as
know,
ace.
it's knowingness. You just know, and then you have to be like, okay, see how that uh in comes bring collaborates with everything else.
That I can tell you the one being that I really do resonate with and have had really my most profound spiritual experiences have been focused around, and that is the being of the Christ. And in Rosicrucianism, they talk about Christ being the spirit of the sun at the center of our solar system, not the
Hmm.
sun itself, just like we're not our body, but the Christ being is that spiritual being that uses the sun for as its vehicle for this manifestation we call our solar system. So that and Max Heindel of the Rosicrucians down in LA, um, he talked about the life spirit being, that's the aspect of that solar deity that we call the Christ, because Christ is not Jesus's last name. Christ
Right,
is references the being itself.
right.
And so by what Heindel said is that the life spirit cannot descend into the physical plane any farther than the life of that. In other words, like I'm looking at a rose bush outside my window. I can see very plainly the leaves and the stalks of the rose bush, but can I see the life in it? Can I actually see
Mhm,
the not just the photosynthesis, but the energy transfer in
mhm,
photosynthesis? And not just that, because that's like a almost at the level of electricity or chemical electricity. Can I see the higher octave of that energy? In other words, it's like we have kundalini, we have nerve energy within our bodies, but it's it's the lowest level of the life energy. But if we focus
mhm,
on the life energy, the nerve energy, and then we look for the higher octave of that,
mhm.
then we start to get into the spiritual realm that informs the biochemistry of our
Yeah.
being.
Mhm.
So again, and that's a hierarchical structure because we're dealing with areas of high vibration and successfully stepping it down into areas of lower vibration. And the more physical the manifestation, the denser it is. And so in the more spiritual, then the less dense it becomes, in
Mhm.
which translates in vibration as higher frequency. So we just keep taking it up and up and up, and pretty soon it all just disappears into a unified field.
Right. And you are thrown, even though you were used the English of see, you're thrown not to see that those different vibrations, let's say, but to know them. You know them, and then you're informed by that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really the
Cool.
only thing to be informed by. If you're going to open up to anything, open up to that. That's why that's why in the Judeo-Christian tradition, like in the first commandment, it says, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's what it's saying. We go for the highest, that the highest has to be the highest that we can conceive, the highest energetic substance we can actually touch. That's God for us. And as we do that and we acclimatize to it, then we rise even higher. But we can't rise higher than what we can actually perceive.
Yep. Got to go around the turn to see the new. Yeah. I don't know how to say
Yeah.
it, but definitely. Yeah. Um, for me, the picture in my practice is, refreshing the symbol that we use to represent my experience of the divine needs constant refreshing because my experience of the divine is always shifting.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Yeah.
grow into greater and greater consciousness.
Hmm. Right. And we can, if we take the consciousness turn, I've been thinking about these pictures lately. Just take the turn, we just see a whole different world around that turn that you can't even
Yes.
see from over here, but you can see like, oh, hello, whole new world. So
Yeah.
yeah,
The
I love it.
horizon is always receding. The closer we get to
Yes,
the horizon, then
yes,
we've got yet another horizon.
love it. Yeah. So very exciting. Did you form relationships there that you're still like um that are more or less juicy that you serve each other's path that you're still in contact with? Like, is there still community there for you? One or
Oh,
more?
yes. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we have a community and it's growing larger all the time. Uh, we teach classes online through the Holy Order of Mans. Mans is spelled Mans. It's an acronym. has esoteric meaning. So we have holyorderofmans.com and Zoom events. So there we offer several classes that we offer a class on tarot symbolism.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I teach on a variety of topics, mostly on meditation and so things like that. And we have like a Sunday meditation too.
Cool. So they're like intake stuff. And then is there still an opportunity to do the kind of training that you did behind the scenes somewhere?
Yeah, not really. No,
Uh,
that's I think that for its day and age, the monastic experience is what we needed, but now not
mm,
so much. People are, number one, I mean, really busy. Um, and number two, things are just moving too fast. So we work one-on-one with people and with groups through classes, but we really emphasize the spiritual exercises. And like when I coach someone, I give them spiritual exercises and then I follow up with that. What did you experience?
mhm,
You see, and then that becomes the guide. What did you experience?
mhm,
So, and that's way better than trying to figure it out on one's own by reading books or watching YouTube videos. Uh,
mhm.
you have to put in the work. You have to do the inner work. That's the
Right.
only way to progress on the spiritual path.
Mhm. Yeah. I find with mystics, there's a lot of cat behavior, a lot of, don't tell me what to do. Um, so I guess there's just w- sometimes we come to a point in our journeys where it's like we're stuck or and like we're just like we really do need help and are willing to take it. I just find there's a lot of like I just want to go to God and therefore a lot of wandering around in the dark and
Right, right.
trying to
Well,
reinvent the wheel.
the biggest pitfall on the spiritual path is self-delusion. You can really, the ego is very subtle and can co-opt just about anything you try to do with it.
Right.
So that's what a coach is for, or what a guru is for, or a teacher. Uh, it's like in Zen monasteries, they had the Zen stick,
Yeah.
right? It's got to be some of that, right? It can't be all that, but there's got to be some of it. So that's one reason why we have a coach. Like if you're an athlete and you have a coach, he's gonna point out what you're doing wrong, as well as tell you what to do, how to do it right.
Right.
That's just part of training. See, that's what separates training from lecturing.
Right. So so the people who really know that they need a coach are willing to come
Yeah,
and get coached and then be in
yeah,
that structure and then hear what we don't want to hear and do what we don't want to do sometimes.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's built on trust. You have to have trust in order for that to work.
Hmm.
So a person in a coaching position or a teaching position has to it has to have integrity. It's the
Yeah.
very second, there's always that dynamic you have with in a teacher-student relationship. There's a huge opportunity for abuse of that authority and
Hmm.
that influence you have over that person. So you got to be really, really on your game and not allow your personal desires or your uh, especially anything egotistical because a lot of people, what I have found is that the more intelligent a person gets, the more interested in power they get.
Interesting.
So yeah, it goes way past money. It goes past sex. It goes when if you can get so skilled at what you do that you can get people to do what you want them to do without them realizing it. For some people, they really get off on that. And that's serious abuse. That's like something, and that's why in Buddhism they talk about the Sangha, the community. In the community, it's got to be hierarchical because you have teachers within the community, they have to have teachers. Everybody has to have a wingman, somebody who watches over you to make sure you're staying on the path and you're not veering off into these temptations. Buddha went through three major temptations. Jesus went through the identical temptations. With
It's cool,
Buddha,
huh?
the first temptation was Mara, who in Christianity we would call Satan or the devil, which is what Jesus, but it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. And it was all internal. It wasn't like an external being came to Buddha as Mara. And, no, this is Buddha doing his shadow work and Jesus doing his shadow work. And the
Hmm.
first temptation in both cases had to do with appetite. Buddha was tempted with sex, and Jesus was tempted with food. You know, Mara offered his daughters to Buddha, and Satan offered, he tempted Jesus, turn these stones into bread. You're hungry. You've been fasting all this time. And both of them said no. So, so Mara or Satan bumped up their game, and they gave him the test of fear. And with Buddha, he's sitting under the bo tree, and Mara commands his army to shoot all their arrows at Buddha, and just this rain of arrows comes at Buddha, but they turn into flowers and fall at his feet. And with Jesus, Satan takes him up on the wall of the temple and says, "Jump off, because the angels will catch you." So both of those have to do with fear. So first is appetite, and second is fear. But then he saves the best for last, and that's power. For Buddha, he said he appealed to his sense of obligation, because Siddhartha, Buddha, was the son of a king. He was the heir apparent for a kingdom. And so Mara is telling him, "Why are you doing this nonsense? You need to rule. You need to rule the world. So, get up off your butt and go back to the palace and take on the kingship and rule, because who better for the job? You've got all this enlightenment. You're so smart. Who better to do the job?" And Satan tells Jesus exactly the same thing, tempting him with power. He says, "If you bow down and worship me, all of this world will be yours." You see? And
Yeah,
so mystically or even psychologically, we interpret that as the intellect, because there's nothing worse than the intellect who acquires power unto itself, that leads to arrogance and abuse. So, and both Jesus and Siddhartha knew that because of their training, and realized that was a test. That's part of their shadow coming up. And they're dealing with it, and they both appeal to a higher power. They relinquish. Jesus doesn't argue with Satan. He just quotes scripture. That's appealing to a higher consciousness. So both Siddhartha and Jesus are showing us how to do that through those stories. So it's the deep, deep mystical teachings within these religious tropes.
totally. Yeah, it's so important and it's so lost. It's like it's not even there. Sorry. It's like it's not even there in the
Yeah,
Bible.
for a lot of people, especially traditional mainstream Christianity, especially, uh, they've lost that. But people like Jim Marion, see, they're picking up on it, and
Hmm.
Richard Rohr
Yeah,
and Cynthia Bourgeault, and these
sure.
contemplative people, they're really zeroing in on that. So,
Hmm. Yeah. I I find it fascinating the the it just seems to me I just have to say it my way and then I want to hear more. I really want to understand this because you said a few times the intelligence is the issue. You said the more intelligent, the more interested in power. But are you not meaning just rational intelligence? Are you meaning the intelligence of the system, like we become more capable? Or do you mean that, or do
oh
you mean
yeah.
actual rational intelligence only, the analyzer?
Well, if I know, if I can read you,
Hmm.
just through the words you use and the body language you're displaying.
Right.
Um, if I and I know how to I know the right words to use, then like any good marketing person, to be real, I can make you do stuff.
Sure.
Right?
Right. Right.
So it's that kind of power.
I see. So it's the perceptive power. It's the system intelligence, not the analyzer intelligence.
Yeah,
It's
it's more of an art, It's a
got it.
because you have to have feeling. It's not just formulaic. You
Right.
have to be able to feel your way. And we do this all the time. You and I
Sure.
are doing that right now. We're reading
Totally.
off of each other, and we're steering the conversation in ways that, you know, that it can go, you know.
Right.
So through
And we
trust and
humans,
transparency, then we
right.
really can go places.
Right. So we humans, we do it more and less consciously and unconsciously, but we're always reading, we're always perceiving,
Oh yeah,
our physical senses and soul senses, and then finding, the way to connect or to abuse or whatever it is we're looking to do.
right, right. And the beautiful thing is too, when people with any degree of developed consciousness get together and have a conversation like we're having, then what we're doing is we're opening up new doors. We're actually, and this is like in the Bible, it says, where two or three are gathered in my name, there will I be in the midst of them.
Hmm.
Jesus telling his disciples. If you take that out of the context of the people involved, that's how it works. Whenever two or more people get together and enter into a shared consciousness with that good faith intention of discovering the truth, man, oh man, it opens up. It's like being in a room and opening a skylight. There's
Right.
immediate access to greater and greater levels of consciousness. If you
Right.
do it in his name, you see, that's like you're doing it for that purpose. You're doing it in good faith with transparency and honesty
Hmm.
and trust.
Hmm.
And then the
Yeah,
more you do that, then any violation of that trust becomes a very big deal.
it's a really big deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that the safety of the vow picture. Um and in this conversation it's like I got the picture of like the seven blind guys and the elephant. It's just like when we get together, we have all different perceptions from all different places in all different ways. And putting that together is it's very powerful and insightful and opens
Yeah.
new doors. I'm completely with you. It's not just more perception, which is very helpful, as we just were talking about, being
Yeah.
able to perceive and read, but also then new doors get flown open out of that new perception.
Yes.
It's gorgeous. Love that picture.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
the
and
essence,
and
I
more
think,
and more
of the
energy
of the
flow
Sangha.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the whole purpose of the Sangha in Buddhism is doing it together, coming in together and doing it. It's not all that it is, because that's just 1/3 of the triad. You have Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So, but it's in when we come together, because we are already together. So part of
Yeah.
consciousness development is discovering that, hey, we're already connected. We only think we have these individual minds. We do have an individual mind, but and we need it in order to function in this world. But if that's all we have, then we're extremely limited, and we can't get through that ceiling. We can't open the skylight.
Right. So some of the stuff I'm seeing with the cats, the individual mystics just being like, leave me alone. I'm busy fighting the darkness, or I'm busy being light, or whatever. It's not just stuck. It's inability and unwillingness to play with others in ways that might go boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Well, the biggest avoidance is accountability. We don't like being accountable to someone else, especially, least of all to ourselves. So accountability is really key. on the spiritual path because it measures you. And anytime you get people saying that, well, there's, you have your truth or you have your spiritual path and I have mine. That's really an avoidance tactic of don't don't you dare hold me accountable. You see, and that's like sometimes that's just where you're at. You need to regroup. You need to assimilate and digest uh, uh, acclimatizing to a new level of consciousness that changes your whole vibration. And you just need to stay there for a while and let that sink in before
Totally.
you're
Yeah.
ready to go on. So we can't just say anybody who's not following a guru or teacher that they're avoiding uh, uh,
Yeah.
accountability. Sometimes you really do need to just rest and let and marinate.
Yes.
So, but it takes a really, it takes a skilled teacher to know to be able to distinguish those different states of readiness.
Yeah. It's a spiritual discernment. So, and also what you're saying, I hear what you're saying. It's just I think it helps to have a distinction because some of that we were just talking, you see this way, I see that way, I see from here, you see from there. That's part of our path. That's part of how our path appears. And that's gift. That's gift. But there's I really don't understand like there are different ways to center. I come from here and I go from here and you go from here and over there. I don't know. I want to hear more about this. Um, this that there's not different spiritual paths. Like I understand we go through consciousnesses,
Right,
but
right.
how we go through them is different for different people and
Yeah,
different.
yeah, but
Yeah.
let's use an analogy. It- you're female, I'm male, but anatomically, we are almost identical.
Hmm.
In other words, our internal organs are pretty much the same, except in the reproductive and the endocrine system. But even in the endocrine system, the glands are pretty much the same. They're just
Right.
operating differently.
Yes.
So if you go to a doctor, there's kind of he's going to treat you as a human body, right? A human being, which there's a huge amount of knowledge that we've accumulated about the human body that is universally applicable, whether it's somebody
Right.
who lives in New York City or somebody who lives in Uganda. It doesn't matter. Doesn't race, all of that stuff doesn't matter because we're basically all human beings. So spiritually, it's the same. We all have the Kundalini. We all have the chakras. We all have these spiritual centers that are just as real and just as universal as our physical as the physical body. So the physical body and the spiritual body are they mirror each other. So so just as physicians have this built up accumulated knowledge about how to treat illness or health in a physical body, there are spiritual physicians who know how to address the problems with the energetic body, the energy bodies, the life body, the astral, these subtle bodies that we have. So
Right.
we have this enormous body of knowledge that helps us do that. So what I'm trying to get at is that regardless of which spiritual path you're on,
Okay.
that has to address and has to function within what's already there.
Yeah.
So in that way, all the
Yeah.
spiritual paths, they're
Totally.
different, but as they climb the mountain, the closer they get to the summit, the more
Yes.
identical they become.
I totally hear that. Thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
for teasing that out because I'm all with you. And it's really fascinating. And you might we might the same person you might say, do this, and I might say do this, but it really does the same thing. And you know,
Yep.
and then they go pop or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's just like Michael, my partner likes to say it's like it's a spelling difference. It's you spell it differently.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the same. We just spell it differently.
Oh,
Cool.
and we do get attached to that spelling, don't we?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. Like as if it matters. And I think, in different consciousnesses, we attach to, the mythology or the stories or like you have to go through this, jump these hoops in these ways. And and I think that's part like it's easier when we come along because we know that we're past that. We're past that. And
Yeah,
it's just like we don't have to trip over language and paradigms. Um,
yes,
and it's not our identity.
that's right.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So, I could talk about your training and how you do it forever and ever. Please tell me anything you want to tell me about that. Meanwhile, I'd love to hear about like your earlier life and what got you to where we started in the conversation. Like, what, what happened for you? Did you show up like this in the world? Did something kick it off that you took this very spiritual jag?
Yeah, well, I started off, I grew up in Reno, Nevada, born in California, but grew up in Reno. And if you know anything about Reno, then that tells you a whole bunch about me. Reno is a wild place. It's a wild west. So I raced motorcycles, I raced cars, I was a ski racer. That was my main thing. And so I know a lot about athletic training and training in general, and especially coaching.
Mm.
And but I grew up in I grew up in the 60s, and so I participated in all of the things that were going on in the 60s, and that
Woo!
kind of yeah, oh yeah. So I had my mind blown, but I had the predisposition to that anyway because from very earliest stages I was always interested in consciousness, but that just blew the doors off, and so and that and skiing is just like it's not really like an earthly experience. You're way up in the mountains and you're almost flying, so it's a very transcendent experience anyway. So all of that combined to really get me ready to accept a teacher. I was drawn to the Holy Order of Mans. I instantly joined and went through that training. So but yeah, growing up in Reno and having my kids, they were calling me Reno boy because we had the family album, and in it there was like a half a dozen newspaper clippings of Reno boy admitted to the
Oh,
emergency room, Reno boy wins ski race, Reno boy, Reno boy.
oh, that's
So
hilarious.
yeah,
So
I
you were
was
very
always getting
young when you
this.
were doing this, which is it
Oh
helps
yeah,
to be
yeah,
fearless and flying.
yeah.
That's neat. And I do wonder, there's this big, I mean, it's big and growing stuff about plant medicine. How do you relate to that from your past and present?
Well, I think there's a very important distinction to make. And that, if people take LSD, for instance, or ayahuasca, the tendency is to say, this is what this drug does to me. That's commonly what people say. But I like to say that these things, these substances, these molecules, they are the key. You're the door. So all these substances do is open the door. It's up to you to walk through it. And once you do walk through it, it's up to you what you do there. You see, so that's why some people have good experiences, some people have bad experiences. Um, so it's you. It's you centered. It's not the substance that's driving the thing. You take the substance, it opens you up, and then what do you do with that? Where do you go with that? Because these substances will open up your mind. That's what the word psychedelic means is mind revealing, mind manifesting. But that's what that means. It reveals one's mind to oneself, all
Mhm.
of your mind. So And there's very important research being done on that now. I know there's a guy at Johns Hopkins University who's working with psilocybin or the mushroom, and they're injecting people with the psilocybin as they're laying in an MRI machine so that they can observe changes in the brain. And
Hmm.
it's amazing what they're finding out. And one of the conclusions they're coming to is that the brain is a reducing mechanism.
Yeah.
That's what the brain does. It filters, primarily it filters.
Yes.
And so what these substances do is they turn off the filters. And then wow, that's then you start to see things that the brain starts talking to itself in ways that it doesn't normally. Different parts of
Right.
the brain start communicating, and that can be overwhelming for some people. But if your intention is to go into it to explore consciousness and your own potential, then it can be very valuable. And I think that we lost like 60 years of valuable research time through
Yeah.
the misallocation of these substances to making them Schedule One drugs.
Hmm.
I don't use psychedelics, in training people, but I'm experienced with them, so I know what they're about, and I've done a lot of research and reading on it, like Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. This is really important stuff, and it's very popular now. So that anybody who's involved in spiritual work, you have to know about it because a
Yeah.
lot of people are using ayahuasca, psilocybin especially, and so you have to know that terrain.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm getting the impression that the structures that we bring to in our spiritual discipline are very useful
Hmm.
for, like there's people that are just throwing themselves into this without a lot of structure, without a lot of
Oh yeah,
internal muscle, uh, rootedness to be able to, however you say it, to be able to have
right.
a safe structure within to handle it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I believe it helps to have some inner tools and um, paradigms to um, to not be just lost, in some of the stuff is disturbing.
right. Yeah, I've never been able to understand people who approach these things with a party mindset. "Oh, let's have a good time. Let's take LSD
Right.
or magic mushrooms or something like that." Because to me, that's about as recreational as elective surgery.
Yeah.
You go into yourself and you start discovering everything about yourself. I mean,
Hmm.
that's rigorous, intensive work. And one psychedelic trip can be the equivalent of 10 years of psychotherapy. I mean, it's just enormous ground can be gained within just a few hours. Uh, and so it's not trivial
Right.
at all. This is something, it's very serious. And there are people who shouldn't take these things because if I'm not sure the exact, but I think if a person has schizophrenia, they don't want to take psychedelics because that can exacerbate the situation. So,
Already too open, to opening up what's already too open
oh yeah,
and
yeah,
unprotected and um, not organized. Yeah. Yeah.
right. So we have to be careful with these things. They're very, very powerful.
Yeah.
But they don't replace the spiritual disciplines either, though. We
Right. That's
can't
what I'm
just,
saying. We need the spiritual disciplines more for that
yeah,
stuff,
yes,
not less.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's individual. If a person is drawn to doing that, then that's them. And usually, spiritually minded people, they've got it together to some degree, so they kind of know what to expect. And and there's there are lots of people who are willing to share their experiences, so people have general idea of what to expect, but it always quote unquote blows their mind when they actually do it.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I have the belief that it's not like we can't go any of those places in meditation with the right tools and focus, but it's a matter of like if we do it ourselves or okay. So it's like, do we want to walk the Appalachian Trail from Maine to Georgia, or do we want to get on a plane in Portland
Yeah.
and fly to Georgia, right? Like, and there's
Yeah.
value to both.
Yes. Well, that's one common criticism is that it's a shortcut and that it's cheating. You're cutting to the head of the line or that kind of thing. But it's like anything else. You have an experience, then what do you do with that experience?
Yes.
Is it just,
Right.
did you go there and just, have a good time and then come back and forget about it? You know?
Right.
Yeah, but these amazing and deep, deep insights into not just your own personality, but the nature of being itself. What do
Yeah.
you do with that? That's up to you. So, if somebody does this kind of thing and then comes back, it's very important to integrate those experiences, really meditate on them and contemplate them and what did I learn and how can I apply it now? And
Yeah.
that's the same because a lot of people they pursue a spiritual path simply to get high on it. It's
Right.
no difference. They're doing it just to get high. But
Right.
that's not to say that there's something wrong with getting high. It's just what can you derive from that? How can you bring it in and make it a part of you? These
Mhm.
experiences are very important. What we experience in meditation, you have to integrate that into your life. So that's why we keep a spiritual notebook. We see something in meditation, we write it down because this, in all likelihood, it's just a fragment, right? Next time we go, or maybe next week or next month, or even 10 years from now, something will be added to that thread and then it'll come together. And it's like an aha moment that is life changing. But we have to approach it as a study and be very disciplined about how we treat these experiences that we have so that we can actually grow into them. They open the door, we have to walk through the door. We can't just, oh, the door is open, I can see through it. Oh, that looks beautiful. It's wonderful, amazing. Next, you go to the next door. Oh, that's beautiful. That's great. Next, that's
Mhm.
just spiritual materialism.
Mhm.
So that's where it really helps to have a coach or a teacher say, no, this door, you're not, you have to walk through this door because once you do, then you find, there's another door and there's another door. But as long as you keep walking down the hall, you'll never discover those inner doors.
Mhm. Yeah. One thing I really am enjoying in listening to you is that um there's there's a set in the spiritual world uh talking about really all they ever want to talk about is letting go, the feminine, just receptivity. And there are times for that, I would say,
Mhm.
but then there's times for taking up, for going forward to for and I'm hearing that in what you say. Is that something that's overt in your practice?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's two-handed. You have to use
Hmm.
both hands with this. There's the
Yes.
receptivity, the letting go, which is predicated on trust. Trust is the most important thing to have on the spiritual path. But you have to be discerning. You have to be able to tell if you're working with a bona fide teacher or you're working with somebody who just wants your money or to control you in some way. So, but once trust is established, then you can let go. But a real teacher will teach you how to let go to the God within you, not to them, right?
Oh, of course.
Because
Yeah.
they're always, yeah, they always keep it, back on you. What are you doing within? So, yeah, there's trust, but then there are the things you have to do. You have to do the exercises, the spiritual exercises. Learning how to control your attention, to master your attention and to master your thinking, how to turn off
Mhm.
the chattering in your head. That's very important because until you do that, you're not going to hear anything. All you're going to hear is your own thoughts. But there's a lot to that. So you have to learn concentration. Once you learn how to concentrate, then you learn how to meditate. And then there's steps beyond that as well. So it's two-handed. It's positive and negative. It's masculine and feminine. It's centripetal, expansive, contractive. It's the
Right.
same
It's all the
basically across all
things.
those domains. Yeah.
All the things. Right. And if we just focus in one direction, then that's well and good. We'll go in that direction, but we won't be building the other arm. We won't be we won't be able to
Right.
do all the
Right.
things. Awesome.
Yeah.
Then
Just
we'll be
letting
back at
go. Just letting go is not going to do it, because you let go, but what are you letting go to? If you base everything on your emotions, if you base truth on how it makes you feel, that's a fool's parade, because something very good for you can feel like fire, right?
yeah.
I mean, the thing,
Right.
and Carl Jung talks about that. He says, working with your shadow, you have to go into places that you do not want to go.
Right. Everything says no.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to know when that's okay to do that, or if you're really dealing with something dangerous, you see.
Yeah.
But that's where you need a teacher. You just that kind of work is very difficult to do on your own.
Awesome. So when we made this plan to get together a couple weeks ago or whatever it was, and um and then time's gone by, and I wonder what came to you about what you might want to share, or what you might want to uh, open up in this conversation.
Yes, well, I have been engaged lately in a campaign through my website and my classes and my emailings and my YouTube videos, especially, uh, getting people to calm down, because we're in a very volatile situation now socially.
Yeah.
And so I'm calling on spiritual people to take a step back and to center themselves and get calm within themselves and stop buying all the bullshit. To stop falling for all the spin and get a little bit of objectivity and a little bit of humility to where they can actually listen to the people they so strongly disagree with. Because you
Mhm.
cannot claim to be a spiritual person if you hate, right? I mean,
It would,
that's,
yeah, it would seem. It would
yeah,
not
yeah.
seem.
And even if you know the other side is really headed for a cliff, it's still a good idea not to hate. Like Michael Corleone said in The Godfather, he says, never hate your enemies. It affects your judgment.
Wow.
So, but you got to back it down, because, we just saw recently, and this, it's a political ploy as old as the hills. If you want to take out your political adversary, all you have to do is get enough people to think that he's evil incarnate, and some crazy person will do the job for you. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the oldest trick in the book.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that and know and back away from the rhetoric, because here we have, Trump is either Hitler or he's the Messiah,
I know.
you know? And either one of those that's serious trouble for a free society. You
Yes.
don't want a Hitler, nor do you want a Messiah. You just
Right.
want somebody who will do the damn job, right? I'm not voting for a saint. I'm not looking for a parent or a daddy, or a mommy. Yeah, I just want somebody to make sure that, the economy keeps running and that we don't get invaded by foreign powers,
Is that all?
Yeah, I'll settle
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yes. So is this are you just speaking to it because it helps to speak to it, or is there more?
Um, Yeah, as I said, and as you know, I mean, it's a very volatile subject. There are so many topics in our public dialogue right now have electric fences around them.
Yeah.
Some things you are not allowed to talk about. I will go out of my way to talk about those things, but but I have to be careful because it's so easy to alienate people. I mean, you just with one wrong word, you can alienate half of your audience. And so I'm trying to
Right.
find a different perspective, a different angle to approach this, which is simply calm down. Just calm down and stop using hateful rhetoric and stop demonizing your enemies. It's so anti-Christ to hate your enemies, right? I mean, Jesus said, love your enemies. And then, of course, we have to talk about what that means, and love is just, at the basic level is to stay connected with the person and listen to what they have to say.
Yes.
Don't demonize them, because the minute you demonize somebody, you dehumanize them.
Yes.
And really, then it's all you're doing is projecting all of your crap onto them. That's
Yeah.
all you're doing. But if you
Yeah.
listen and you approach them, like within the Hindu attitude of namaste, you have to at least approach somebody with the attitude that they believe what they're saying. Not everybody is trying to manipulate you, uh, nor deceive you. There are people like that. You can't turn a blind eye to that. You have to realize there are people that are really trying to manipulate you and are lying
Sure.
through their teeth. If their mouth is moving, they're lying. But you have to approach your enemies in good faith and allow them to speak their mind, and not just learn about them through their critics, people on your side criticizing them. And so you use their criticism as a proxy to evaluate this person, when really you're deceiving yourself. You're letting somebody else manipulate your thinking, and you're not listening to the person themselves, really trying to understand
Mm-hmm.
what they believe in.
Yeah.
And when Trump won the election in 2016, I voted for Hillary. And when he won, it floored me. I mean, it literally took my breath away, just like it did with most everyone else too, because it was so totally unexpected. Some Democrats, like Michael Moore, the filmmaker, he saw it coming and he tried to warn people, but nobody would listen. They all believed the polls, and they believed the spin, because polls can be manipulated too. If you know anything about
Sure.
them, they can be manipulated. So
Yeah.
everybody just fell in line, and then were completely surprised. But I decided at that point, this is crazy and I'm crazy. Why couldn't I see this coming? And who are the, half the population of the country that voted for this guy? Why did they vote for him when he's so obviously, he's very different, he's so out there, he doesn't hide himself. He's so transparent.
Yes.
And and so I started studying conservative philosophy, and looking at people like Edmund Burke, and going back and listening to other, not just people like Rush Limbaugh. That's populism and rabble rousing
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. But going to the philosophers themselves, who really form the foundation for conservative thought. And I found a lot of good stuff there, and I came to realize, well, I have both conservative and liberal elements within me. Some
Mm-hmm.
parts of my life I'm conservative, some I'm liberal.
Yeah.
But none of that means that does not translate to Democrat, Republican.
Right.
There's those two things are very fluid, and uh, they've almost switched positions,
Yeah.
where the Republicans now are actually more liberal than the Democrats. So because of the
In some ways, yeah.
restrictions on free speech, and yeah, in some ways. So so we have to be careful not to buy into the spin, and
Yeah.
gain some objectivity and some intelligence about it. What are these two, what is liberalism about, and what is conservatism about? And one thing I know now for sure, I mean, I know this more than I know anything, you need both. You
Yeah.
try to eliminate one, and that's like taking one wing off an airplane. It's not going to fly. So we need both. Like the analogy is liberalism is the accelerator in a car, and conservatism is the brakes. Because liberalism says no matter how we're doing anything right now, we can be doing it better, and we should
Yes.
always be looking for new and innovative ways to do our thing better. Conservatives say, not so fast, buddy. You might get so far out ahead of this enterprise that you're gonna lose the plot
Crash. Yeah.
and take us down. Yeah. So you need both. It's like a marriage,
Totally.
you need
Hmm.
both.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I'll just insert that for the last whatever, 8 years or whatever, certainly in the last several years, I'm being like stamping my foot a little bit and just being like, this is not fair. Because of this, I'm getting more overtly conservative, right? Because somebody has to do it, right? Like I
Yeah.
like supply lines. No, I
Yes, right.
I like peace and democracy. I love this country, right? Like, but I've always been just like, let's change this, let's do this. And now I'm just like, dude, somebody's got to hold the middle, darn it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. So keep going. This is great.
Yeah. So I'm doing a series of videos right now talking about how to be spiritually political. And I talk about a lot of these principles and how to balance these things within your own life and become more objective and how you view politics. And also with a healthy dose of self-knowledge, because the more we know ourselves, the better we understand other people. It,
Yeah.
it, but it, and here's a big problem these days is the assumption that all people are good, that everybody has good intentions if you can just get beyond the surface stuff, right? And that's not always the case. I mean, you have people who are deeply malicious and psychopathic or some form of psychopathology. And
Hmm.
to ignore that is and those people, they're the very ones who want to be in political office.
Yeah.
Right? So
Right.
when it comes to politics, you have to be doubly aware and doubly
Yes.
observant and discerning
Yes.
and critical, about these people
Right.
because they are already seeking power.
Yes. Pretty much whoever wants it shouldn't have it.
Right, exactly, right.
We really need the one.
I
And there's been
I
sci-fi about this, right? It's just like people get put in power, just like, all right, it's like they can't be seeking it because then that's the problem. It's funny.
yeah,
It's a funny paradigm.
yeah,
It's nice in the books,
it is.
but
Yeah.
it won't
Funny,
work
ha
in
ha.
our society. But I mean, it's a good theory.
Yep.
Yeah. But
Yeah, so
yeah,
so there's the naivete, it's like uh everybody should be taken care of, everybody should be given a lot of rope, you know, and but really that's how you treat a child. That's appropriate for children, but children grow up and become adults, then the emphasis shifts away from protecting to accountability. Then we have to learn how to behave and how to be accountable and um, how to pay for our mistakes, right? Which means learning from our mistakes. But if we're never held accountable, how will we ever do that? So, um, a lot of cities right now, they're just letting criminals go. People can walk into a store, and as long as they don't steal over $1,000 or 900 something, uh, they're not arrested. Or if they're arrested, they're released the same day. There's literally no consequence, and it
wow.
doesn't take Oh yeah, this is very big problem in cities like Seattle and Portland, San Francisco. Like in Seattle, large many companies in the downtown district just had to simply leave
Mm,
because there was no law enforcement, and
fascinating.
so the city is going to the dogs. There's lots of
Yeah.
documentation about this, and I've been in those cities. You know, like you, I was traveling around for 2 years, and I went to all of these cities, and they're like another country. I mean, I lived in on the San Francisco Peninsula for almost 20 years and worked in San Francisco several times a week, and it was a beautiful city. I was there recently, and oh my God, it's like it's like some third world country in some respects. I mean, you have the very wealthy, and then everybody else is using the streets and the sidewalks as an outdoor uh, latrine,
Mm,
outdoor toilet. It's just it's crazy. It's so beyond the imagination. You have to see it to believe it.
fascinating. I know I lived in Seattle for 16 years. We left like 5 years ago. Yeah. Um, and it did get where we lived. We lived in Seattle, but like not downtown. And at first it was so safe.
Hmm.
It get safe, both for
Yeah,
our property and for ourselves, um, at night and daytime property, nighttime. So, but and it continues, and I get differing reports. I think it depends on where. I get differing reports from my friends about, oh, it's about the same or it's different. But I really noticed a big shift. And I was involved with some camp, some ministry stuff. And some of the story is that, there's a growing economic issues. So there's more people that are
yeah,
without homes.
yeah,
But also there's big drugs. It's just really devastating. It's
yeah.
very hard to find a middle ground in that. Um, but yeah, I hear you that we need, I really shifted in some of my views on that because I did go the extra mile, with some of my unhoused neighbors and found that like I couldn't help shift. I couldn't, I
Mm.
couldn't, even have somebody live with me and have them be willing to shift
And what?
and be willing to shift and to be willing to,
Right,
uh,
right.
there's some just it's not just immature stuff. There's mental health. There's a lot of mental health that stuff going on. Um,
Yeah.
so there's drugs,
It's a
mental
matter
health,
of
economic.
balance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but something's got to happen. I'm with you. There's real destructive stuff going on, and Seattle's, and it's the same in some ways in the San Francisco areas. There's been all this tech, so there's just the rich get richer going on,
Yeah.
and the middle class is just getting decimated.
Right. Right.
Can't
Yeah,
live
and
in the
so we have
city.
to really analyze that and why that's happening and steps to take to mitigate that because that's a
Right,
natural process. The richer people get, the easier it is to acquire more and more money. That
right,
gap grows and people fall out of the bottom.
right, right.
And I'm in my heart, I am liberal. I do not like seeing people living on the streets. That really bothers me. But I'm conservative enough to know that it's not primarily an economics problem. It's more of a drug problem.
It's a lot of
And
drug.
that's why a lot of people fall out of the bottom. It's either because of drugs or once they find themselves in that position, they get swallowed up by the drug culture, and then that's all they're living for. And you can't solve that problem with money at that point, except through treatment.
Right.
But you
Yeah,
can't treat people if they're living on the street. So,
it's
but
hard.
the real problem is the way that politicians are using these very real problems
Yes.
using them like pawns on a chessboard.
Yes.
They don't care about people. They care about staying in power. And not all of them. I'm not
Right.
cynical in that sense, but I'm not stupid
Right.
either. I know that politicians are there to accumulate power and wealth. The vast majority of them. I mean, everybody knows that, but we pretend that that's not what's going on, and therefore we think, oh, these problems are unsolvable.
Mm.
They're not unsolvable. We could solve them very quickly, but
Yes.
there are too many people who are making way too much money by using these problems to advance themselves. And
Yeah.
if we don't see that for what it is, then there is no solution to the problem. It's a runaway train from that point. But it
Right.
takes consciousness, and people have to learn how to get beyond their emotions, beyond their feelings, and really become observant and critical in their
Yes.
thinking, not to lose their compassion, because you lose that, and then it's game over that way as well.
Right.
But you can't ignore what's going on the ground and look at it critically, and get underneath the surface and stop listening to the lies that on both sides. I mean, if they're a politician, they're lying. It's just almost given, right? I mean, some are sincere, some are really actually trying to do good, but the ones in power, they're there to maintain that power. And there's, there are reasons for that too, because what the wealthy and the powerful want more than anything else, uh, except more power. What they want more than anything else is order. They are scared
Yeah.
of chaos, because they know if societies, when they descend into chaos, nobody wins. Everybody loses. The whole
Yeah.
thing just gets overturned. And then we start from square one. Nobody wants to do that. So they've always got that in their mind. How do we maintain order? But that's just one side of the scales, and they've got all their weight on that. So then they go for power, because you need power
Right.
to maintain order,
Mm.
especially in a diverse society like ours. I mean, we've got all these differing uh, competing interests. So,
Yeah.
but that's supposedly what we're set up to handle. We're
Supposedly.
set up as a country to accommodate this enormous diversity. But you can't have diversity if you don't also have a superordinate principle that all people, no matter what their specific interests are, they can all look to that one thing, that one principle they can all agree with.
Mm.
And for us in this country, that's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, or the pursuit of a meaningful life is what I like to
Mm.
rephrase that, because happiness comes and goes. But if you have something that you're willing to, that you see as greater than yourself, and you desire to live into that higher reality, that's the pursuit of a meaningful life. But you can't do that if you're not free to do that. You see,
Mm.
and you can't be free if you're not allowed to talk about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of us, we need to start talking about these things openly and honestly,
Yeah.
and to talk with each other.
Right. I agree. And
Otherwise,
and
otherwise we're
otherwise
going to
only the
hell.
extremists get to talk and
Yes,
we
yes,
just spiral
exactly.
down. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And yeah, I think all of it is very important to talk about.
So this
Hmm.
is where the rubber meets the road, right? This is where heaven and earth come together. Your spirituality, what good is it if you can't apply it to your daily living, and to your,
Right.
to your family, yourself, your family, your community, and your country.
Our own
All
choices
and
and our own sovereignty. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. I.e., not to the other people,
Yep.
ourselves. It's so much easier though. Like I train healers, it's just like it's just so much easier to focus heal and help, heal and help them, heal and help them, right? And like, oh,
Yes,
you know, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. You know, it's the same thing. It's just like, well, I've got this
exactly.
great spiritual picture. Let's put it over there. It's like, well,
Yeah.
how about we put it over here? And be the change.
Yeah. A little bit of walking the talk, right? See,
Yeah,
that's the importance of spiritual exercises because they really restructure your brain. And
yeah,
and if you do them right, they start to awaken dormant areas of the brain that it's like opening your eyes a little wider, right? Because we don't see anything with our eyes; we see with the visual cortex. But and that's just the mechanical part of it, right? Then consciousness comes in the spirit. But doing spiritual exercises opens up these unused faculties that we have. Like,
yeah.
our vision, our ocular vision is just, that's just the physical part. How much of what we're looking at can we actually see? And that's what spiritual exercises do. They open up those parts of the brain that are just kind of waiting in the wings for, for someone to tap into them.
We're just, well, I could talk to you for a really long time, but we're gonna draw this to a close.
All
Um,
right, good.
um, is there anything that you've wanted to say that you haven't said that is just burning?
Well, I would just like everyone to know that I have a website, michaelmaciel.com. I have a Substack. I have a YouTube channel, and I talk about a wide variety of spiritual topics. And I do a lot of writing, and I do coaching. So I work with people one-on-one. And I'm also in the process of writing a course on how to quiet your mind, and therefore uh, giving people an avenue to where they can really advance in their meditation, quiet the thinking and start listening. So, how to get and follow your inner guidance, how to trust it, and how to make discernment so you don't get off into self-delusion. So those are the things that I do. So I would just invite people to check me out. And I'm also an author. I've written 2 books, and so I can be found on Amazon.
Beautiful. Um, and do you have yeah, I'll I'll put this on the site if you'll send me some links. It'd be great maybe if you have a place where you have a lot of links and I can link to
Yes.
or whatever, however that works. I'll get,
All
just send
right.
me that. Um and I'll get you a little uh blurb about what I'm saying about this and
Great.
we'll go from there. So thank you so much for your
Yes.
time and energy and who you're being and what you're doing in the world. It's really great, and I'm so glad to get to know you a little better.
Yes. Likewise. And thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about what I do.
All right, take care.
All right. Thank you, Wendy.